I was watching my cousin's house for the weekend while she was visiting family. It was a quiet, suburban neighborhood, the kind where nothing ever seemed to happen. She had a small dog, Benny, who mostly kept to himself. But since it was storming that night, he stayed close to me. I didn't mind. I liked having the company. It had been raining all day, and by the time night fell, the wind had picked up, howling through the trees and rattling the windows. I had just finished making a cup of tea and was about to sit down in the living room when I noticed Benny staring at the window. His ears were perked up, and he was completely still, his little body tense. At first, I thought he had heard something outside, maybe a stray cat or an animal passing through the yard. But as I followed his gaze, I realized he wasn't just looking. He was fixated. His deep brown eyes didn't move, didn't even blink. I turned my head toward the window. Rain streaked down the glass, distorting my view of the dark backyard. The motion-sensitive porch light was off, and beyond that, there was nothing but shadows. I sighed and shook my head, telling myself that Benny was just being weird, as dogs sometimes are. But he didn't move. Something about his behavior unsettled me. He wasn't barking, he wasn't growling, he was just staring. I frowned and stood up, walking over to the window. The glass was cold beneath my fingertips as I peered outside. The backyard was a mess of swaying trees and drenched grass. The wooden fence stood tall, enclosing the property. Nothing seemed out of place. And then I saw it. A face, just barely visible in the reflection of the glass, staring back at me. My breath caught in my throat, and I stumbled back. My immediate thought was that it was my own reflection, distorted by the rain and dim light in the house. But no, this face was different. The eyes were hollow, dark pits. The skin looked pale, almost gray. And the mouth, it was slightly open, like it was whispering something. A shiver ran down my spine. I lunged for the curtains, yanking them shut so hard the rod rattled against the wall. My heart pounded against my ribs as I stood frozen in place, listening. The only sound was the storm raging outside. Then a soft tap came from the window. I didn't move. Tap, tap, tap. I clutched my phone, debating whether to call the police. But what would I even say? That I saw a face in the window? That my cousin's dog was acting weird? They'd probably dismiss it as paranoia. Another tap. Benny let out a low, guttural growl, a sound I had never heard from him before. The hair along his back bristled, and he took a slow step backward, eyes still locked on the window. My stomach twisted. If Benny was scared, then something was really wrong. I gathered the courage to move, creeping toward the front door to make sure it was locked. It was. Deadbolt, too. I checked the back door, every window, making sure every possible entrance was secure. I even grabbed a kitchen knife, just in case. The rest of the night, I stayed on edge. Every time the wind howled, every creak of the house made me jump. I barely slept, the knife never leaving my grip. By morning, the rain had stopped. The first thing I did was check the backyard. There were footprints in the mud. They led from the fence to the window where I had seen the face. And then, they just stopped. No returning footprints, no sign of someone walking away, like whoever it was had vanished into thin air. I tried convincing myself it was a prank, some kid messing around. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. That face, those eyes, they weren't human. I never told my cousin what happened. When she got back, I left as soon as I could, only giving her a vague excuse about needing to be somewhere. She never mentioned anything strange happening in her house, and I never asked. But sometimes, late at night, when I think back to that moment, I wonder, what if I had kept looking? What if I had stayed by the window just a little longer? And more importantly, what if it had been looking at me before I ever noticed? This happened last winter when I was driving back home late at night. It had been a long day, and all I wanted was to get home, take a hot shower, and sleep. But nature had other plans. The storm had rolled in earlier that evening, and now the rain was relentless. The wipers on my windshield struggled to keep up, smearing water back and forth, making visibility even worse. The road I was on was an old country highway, barely maintained and nearly pitch black aside from my headlights cutting through the rain. I was about 20 minutes from home when I saw him. A lone figure walking on the side of the road, hunched against the wind. At first, I thought it was just some poor guy caught in the storm. Maybe his car broke down or he lived nearby and was trying to get home. But as I got closer, something about him seemed wrong. His clothes were dark and tattered, completely soaked. His posture was stiff, unnatural. The worst part? His face. He was smiling. Not just a normal, relieved to see a car smile. Number. His lips were stretched into an eerie, frozen grin, like something out of a nightmare. His head was tilted downward, but I could see his teeth through the darkness, white and bared in a way that sent chills down my spine. Every instinct in me screamed to keep driving, to not slow down. But for some reason, my foot hesitated on the gas pedal for just a second. That's when it happened. The second I passed him, his head snapped up. His eyes locked onto mine. I nearly lost control of the wheel. His eyes were wide and dark, like bottomless pits. His smile hadn't changed. It remained frozen in that unnatural, grotesque expression. He didn't break his stride, didn't react, just kept walking. But the way he turned his head so fast, so precise, as if he had been waiting for me to pass, it made my blood run cold. I slammed my foot on the gas. The car lurched forward, tires splashing against the wet pavement. My heart was pounding, my breathing ragged. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see him standing in the road, watching me disappear. But he wasn't there. For a brief moment, I let myself relax. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. Maybe the darkness, the storm, and my exhaustion were all making me paranoid. Then my headlights hit something further down the road. I felt my stomach drop. It was him, standing in the middle of the street, smiling. I slammed on the brakes so hard my car skidded sideways. The figure didn't move. He just stood there, arms limp at his sides, drenched in rain, his grin wider than before. For a moment, I was frozen. How did he get ahead of me? There were no side roads, no paths leading through the trees. The stretch of highway was long and empty. I had been the only car on it for miles. Yet, there he was. The rain hammered against my windshield, and my headlights flickered slightly, making his figure blur and shift. A deep, twisting dread crawled through my gut. My hands were slick on the wheel from sweat. Then, he moved, not like a person would. It was a sudden, jerky lurch, like a puppet being yanked forward, one step, then another. His grin never wavered, his eyes never left mine. I floored it. The car roared forward, and for a split second I thought I saw his mouth open, too wide, like his jaw was unhinging. But I didn't stop to look. I swerved past him, feeling the car shudder as I barely missed him by inches. In the rearview mirror, I expected to see him turning, running after me, something. But he was gone. Not in the way that someone would fade into the distance as I sped away. Gone. Vanished. Like he had never been there at all. I didn't remember the rest of the drive home. My body went into autopilot, hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles were white. My mind raced with explanations, none of them making sense. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for a long time, just listening to the rain beating against the roof, trying to calm the hammering in my chest. I wanted to believe I had imagined it. That exhaustion and paranoia had made me see things. But when I turned off the car and looked in the side mirror, there were wet footprints leading up to my driver's side door. It was a stormy night, the kind where the wind howled through the trees and the rain lashed against the windows like desperate fingers trying to claw their way inside. I was home alone, curled up on the couch with a blanket wrapped around me, trying to focus on the low hum of the television. The power had flickered a few times, and the occasional crack of thunder made me jump. But overall, I felt safe. Until I heard it. Knock. Knock. It was faint but deliberate. My breath caught in my throat as I sat up, listening. Maybe it was just a branch hitting the house? Another burst of wind rattled the window panes, and I convinced myself I had imagined it. Knock, knock. This time it was unmistakable, slow, purposeful. My skin prickled as I slowly turned my head toward the front door. My phone was on the coffee table, and I reached for it with trembling fingers. I checked the time. 12:03 a.m. No one should be out at this hour, especially in this storm. I swallowed hard and forced myself to stand. My heart pounded as I crept toward the door. The peephole was just above my line of sight. I hesitated, then pressed my eye against it. Nothing. The porch was empty. The rain poured down in thick sheets, making it hard to see beyond the glow of the porch light. But there was no one there. My phone buzzed in my hand. I nearly dropped it. The screen lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Why won't you answer?" A cold chill spread through my body. My eyes darted back to the peephole, as if the sender might suddenly appear before me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I typed back, "Who is this?" No response. Then, another knock. This time it was sharper, more insistent. My heart pounded against my ribs as I backed away from the door, double-checking the lock. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it a prank? A lost traveler? Or something worse? The minutes dragged by. The knocking didn't return. Neither did any more texts. But the unease in my gut remained. I didn't sleep that night. At dawn, the storm had finally passed, leaving everything outside drenched and eerily silent. I hesitated before opening the door, the morning light spilling onto the porch. The ground was soaked, puddles forming in the cracks of the pavement. Then I saw it. A single wet footprint, right in the center of my porch, barefoot, human. My stomach twisted. I checked the security camera footage, my fingers fumbling with the app. I scrolled back to 12:03 a.m. At that exact moment, the screen went black. The footage didn't return until 12:10 a.m. By then, the porch was empty, except for the footprint. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. The camera had never malfunctioned before. There was no sign of someone approaching, no sign of someone leaving. Just a single footprint, left behind by someone or something. that was never supposed to be there. That night, I triple-checked my locks. I closed all the curtains and left every light on in the house. And I waited. At exactly 12:03 a.m., my phone buzzed again. "Why won't you let me in?" I didn't reply. My fingers hovered over the screen, but some instinct, some primal fear kept me from typing back. The rest of the night passed in silence. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every shadow in the room seemed to stretch toward me, and every creak of the house made my breath hitch. Morning came, and with it, a strange sense of relief. I convinced myself it had all been some elaborate prank, or my imagination running wild. But just as I was about to step outside, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The footprint from the night before? It was still there. But now, there was another. And another. A trail of wet footprints leading from my porch to my bedroom window. I didn't sleep the next night either. And at 12:03 a.m., my phone buzzed one last time. I'm already inside. I was staying at my uncle's house while he was out of town for the weekend. It was a big, old house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by thick woods. The kind of place that creaked even when no one was moving, where the wind howled through unseen cracks, making it feel like the house was breathing. It had been raining steadily since the afternoon, and by nightfall, the whole place felt eerily quiet. I tried to shake off the unease creeping up my spine as I settled into the living room with a cup of tea. I kept the TV on for background noise, hoping it would drown out the occasional groan of the house shifting. The rain pounded against the windows, and thunder rumbled in the distance. It wasn't long before I started to feel a little drowsy. Then I heard it. A faint thump. It was subtle, like something shifting downstairs. I sat up, straining to hear over the sound of rain tapping against the roof. Another thump. This time a little louder. Then, the unmistakable sound of something being dragged across the floor. My heart started to race. The basement. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe something had fallen over. Maybe a pipe was settling. But deep down, I knew better. The sound had weight to it, like something, or someone, was down there. I reached for my phone, debating whether to call my uncle. But what was I going to say? "Hey, I think there's something in your basement." He'd just laugh it off, tell me I was imagining things. Then, the basement door creaked open. I froze. I had walked past it an hour ago. It had been shut. There was no wind, no draft, nothing that could have caused it to open on its own. Every hair on my body stood on end as I turned my head toward the darkened doorway. The staircase leading down was barely visible, swallowed by shadows. My phone's flashlight barely cut through the thick darkness. And that's when I saw it. At the bottom of the stairs, just beyond the reach of my light, stood a shadowy figure. Motionless, silent, watching. My breath caught in my throat. My mind screamed at me to move, to run, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. The figure didn't shift, didn't make a sound. It was just there. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, it tilted its head. That broke the spell. I slammed the door shut with all my strength, locked it, and stumbled backward, my pulse hammering in my ears. I grabbed the nearest chair and jammed it under the doorknob, backing away toward the living room, where I curled up on the couch, my eyes locked on the door. For the rest of the night, I listened. At first, there was nothing, just the rain, the occasional distant rumble of thunder. But then, a slow, deliberate scratching at the door. I gripped my phone so hard my fingers ached. My thumb hovered over the emergency call button, but something in me refused to press it. Who was going to believe me? That there was a shadow figure in the basement, scratching at the door like it wanted to get out. The scratching stopped after a few minutes, but I didn't move from that couch until the first light of dawn streamed through the windows. I packed my things in a frenzy, stuffing my clothes into my bag with shaking hands. I didn't care if my uncle thought I was crazy. I was leaving. When he called later that afternoon, he was confused. "What happened? You left so early." I hesitated before telling him everything. Every sound, every terrifying detail about the figure in the basement. I braced myself for laughter, for him to tell me I'd let my imagination get the best of me. But he didn't laugh. Instead, there was a long pause. Then, in a quiet, uneasy voice, he said, "That's not possible." I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" "I checked the basement when I got home. The door was locked from the inside." A chill shot through me. "But I locked it from the outside." "I know." He exhaled sharply. "But that's not all." I held my breath as he continued. "There were footprints in the dust down there." My blood turned to ice. Footprints. "But they weren't yours." I ended the call shortly after. I never stayed at my uncle's house again, and I never asked if he ever heard the sounds from the basement after that night. Some things are better left unknown.